everybody, this is going to be my May reading wrap-up. I have some guests with me today, so you'll see both of them wandering around. The first book that I finished this month, in May, which I think really set a precedent for a good month, was I finished Iron Flame. And, you know, I felt like so many people were saying that they did not like Iron Flame. It dragged on, all that stuff. And so then I was nervous to read it. No reason to be nervous. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I actually think that the reason I loved it so much was because I was a lot more invested in the characters than I was in Fourth Wing. And so because of that, every little thing felt a lot more emotional, scary, daunting, you know, all those things, because you're so much more invested in the characters. So really loved that one. Can't believe how it ended. I genuinely don't know how she's going to pick it back up on the next book, but very eager to read that. Next was Daisy Darker, and I read that as an audiobook. I don't know. I'm kind of reading off of my Goodreads here, because this is where I put a lot of my thoughts, but I kind of found all of the characters, Daisy not all of the time, to be pretty unlikable, but maybe that was the point of this book, was that you were kind of supposed to not like some of these characters so that it was supposed to make the ending make more sense. But I will say that the twist at the end did throw me for a loop. I did not see that coming, and it made me second guess my listening skills. So I didn't know if I was thrown for a loop because I'm not an avid audiobook reader, if I maybe missed some things. So I'm not really sure about that. But I would say that it was a good listen as an audiobook, especially if you're somebody who doesn't normally listen to audiobooks. It was definitely a good read in that way. And I felt like it was easy to follow. I just didn't like any of the characters. I found their voices or the narrator's version of their voices to be really annoying. That was really the main thing about that book. And I gave that one a 3 out of 5. I'm a pretty high rater. I just am. And for me, a 3 out of 5 is type of a book. Next was Home is Where the Bodies Are. And to be honest, I was psyched to get my hands on that book. I read it off of Libby, and I was just really excited about it. I think because I like Geneva Rose. I really also thought the cover was so good. It made me really intrigued. And I did feel like I rated this one a 5 out of 5. And it was super fast paced. And it was kind of a dream how limited the details were. That's what I will say, is if you're somebody who loves a lot of details, this probably isn't the book for you. But for me, I kind of like a book that isn't just flooded with details and just makes the story so much longer than it really needs to be. So I really enjoyed that. I didn't see the ending coming, who the villain was, and it really did hook you from the start. Really enjoyed that one. I've seen reviews that were like, I knew who the villain was right away. I did not. And I read thrillers all the time. You can see that on my page. So I don't know if I'm out of the game or what, but I did not guess who the villain would be, and I really loved it. I really liked the book. Now, my second audiobook of the month, which would be my 4th book, was Survive the Night by Riley Sager. This one I gave a 4 out of 5, and I really enjoyed this one as an audiobook because the pace was fast and it immediately started with lots of build-up. So that was, obviously. A few things is that, number one, I felt like the main character was just not smart. I was the whole time I was thinking to myself, what are you doing? And why are you being so dumb? Multiple times I thought that in my head. And I think that maybe kind of ruined the story for me a little bit, because it was in real life, I feel like nobody would be this stupid. So, I don't know. 2 was some of the story didn't make sense, and I don't know if it's because it was an audiobook and I didn't listen well enough, but I think Sager was trying to get you thinking in a different direction, but to me, it didn't make sense by the end. I definitely guessed the bad guy early on, but it still landed well for me at the end, and I did enjoy the book. I've read a few other of Sager's books, which are phenomenal, and this one to me wasn't his best. Still a decent read, and it was really good as an audiobook. I felt, again, it was kind of like a Criminal Minds episode as an audiobook, so that was kind of fun listening to it. But again, I wouldn't say it's his best book, but definitely a decent read to enjoy. Next up was Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier, which 5 out of 5. I think that anything I read from her is going to be a 5 out of 5. My review, first word, wow. Like, she just so good. But one thing I do want to note with Jennifer Hillier books, I've only read a couple so far, but they have some really hard and heavy topics. Like, I don't know if there's trigger warnings somewhere, but that might be a good thing to read before you get into the book, because some of it can be really intense. And like, I don't necessarily have, trigger warnings, but even for me, some of it was like hard to read. So definitely look into that. But this one was just tangled, messy, and it truly had me guessing like the entire time. And I just think Jennifer is such a brilliant storyteller, and I'm really hoping to read every single one of her books, because I genuinely don't believe that she can write a bad one. And it's really not often that you can come across, an author that can keep you guessing, keeps you hooked, but doesn't disappoint over and over again. But for some reason, I think Jennifer can do it. I've read a couple of hers, and I've really enjoyed them, and I just don't think she can disappoint me. Next up, I was really excited about this one. It was an ARC called The Bachelorette Party from Sandra Block. Is a really great author as well. I've read a couple of her books, loved them, and this book is coming out in September, but I got my hands on it early, and it was good. Like, what's funny though is I actually have a book idea, and it revolves around a bachelorette party, so I just thought it was interesting that she ended up writing a book like that. The premise of my thoughts of my story and hers were very, very, very different, but still, thought it was cool. Made me feel like I could be an author. So yeah, she had me guessing the whole time on this one. The back and forth, like past and present, had me feverishly like reading so I could get to the present part again, because obviously the present part is where all of the things are kind of happening. So I was just like, hurry up and reading just so I could get to the present part again. I really appreciate that in a book, because it keeps you, pushing to read more, and there's not really a good point to like stop reading, if that makes sense. I did feel myself getting really impatient trying to get back to the now chapters, which is honestly kind of a fun thing in a book. It makes you fly through it. Next up was another audiobook. I'm just flying through the audiobooks lately, and I am so proud of myself, and it's so helping me read more, which is awesome. But this one was The Teacher by Frida McFadden, and my rating was a 3. The subject in this book is like, makes me want to vomit. It makes me sick, it makes me nauseous, all the things. And again, maybe with this one, check the trigger warnings. I feel like you can kind of tell what maybe might go on by the title, just in case. And then also, I did enjoy all the twists and turns, and I was 100% intrigued with it. Like, I did want to know what kept happening and stuff like that. And I thought it was a very great audiobook. It was super easy to listen to. But then there was definitely some twists at the end that just didn't make sense. Like the big one in the epilogue, for me, after I thought about it for 5 seconds, I was like, that's not possible. Like, that couldn't even happen. I don't know why this was the twist. So for me, that makes it fall really flat if it's like impossible to happen, which I do think it is impossible to happen. That kind of ruins the book for me in that sense. And I thought maybe it was just me, but when I read through the reviews, a ton of people had the same thought. So I was glad to know that it wasn't just me. And then that was it. So that was my May reading wrap up. If you have read any of these, please leave your thoughts below. I'd love to chat about like what we both thought of the books, and then even you can leave below like what you read in May. I'd love to know more. So thanks for watching, and happy reading.